Hi everyone, my name is Tanya and I'm really excited to be taking part in Altenew's March release blog hop featuring these beautiful watercolor brush markers. This is the Tropical Fiesta set and they are dye-based brush markers which are just absolutely gorgeous and so much fun to use. I'm going to be showing you 10 ways on how you can use them. So the first way is one that you've probably seen done lots of times before, where you can use these markers to watercolor in some stamped images. So here I am taking the turquoise brush marker and I am picking up the purple wine, which I have on an acrylic block on the side. And I'm just picking up that purple wine just a little bit and adding it to places where I want to add a little bit of depth. And then what I'm doing is I am wiping my brush marker clean and then I am blending out that purple wine so that it sort of blends in a little bit better into the rest of the petal shape. These markers are dye-based, as I mentioned previously. They blend so beautifully together and it almost feels like cheating. It's so quick and easy to get beautifully blended effects, to add depth and to add shading. I am no expert and there are tons of other videos out there on YouTube land where you can see people who've done some really amazing stuff with these markers. And after I've shown you how I've done the technique, I'm going to be putting in some images of some finished cards as well. So the next technique I am using is creating washes with these brush markers. So I've got some watercolor paper here which I've taped down with some washi tape, and I am watering that down with some water and just a round brush that I have, and I have added it to my paper and I'm adding some splatters with water as well to get some additional depth. And you can lift up some of the color with a kitchen towel as well to give additional texture. The third effect is just another play on doing background washes. Now I absolutely love doing galaxy backgrounds. So I thought maybe I could try and do a galaxy style background using these brush markers because of this absolutely gorgeous color which I'm just putting around the edges, which is called Desert Night. Now I've just added it around the edges. I've put water down on the page first to get the ink flowing a little bit better, and now I'm adding some turquoise, and when I add some of the brush markers I dab it a little bit with a clean brush, and I'm adding, there's no method to creating these galaxy style backgrounds. It's just about experimenting and seeing what kind of effects you like. I would recommend leaving some white spaces in between so that you can get that additional depth. And I'm lifting up some of the ink with a kitchen towel, and as you can see I'm sort of going back and forth with water, with some more color, adding it where I need it, and then just letting it dry and adding more depth wherever I feel like I need it. I'm sorry if you're hearing some scratching noises in the background. It's my cat has decided to become overactive right now and she's behind me and being very distracting as well. One of the lovely things about these brush markers is that they are water reactive, much like distress inks. So I'm flicking some clean water, and after letting it sit on the paper for a couple of seconds, I am lifting that. And as you can see, you get that really beautiful speckled effect where the color has lifted off the paper. Now this one I loved so much, I left it as it is, but I did another one earlier where I added some specks with some white acrylic paint. So the next technique I am using is stamping with these watercolor brush markers. With these brush markers, because they're so juicy, it's the effect that you get is a little bit unpredictable, but I really love that. And once you embrace that, the effect that you're going to get is not so predictable, you can really embrace the effects that you can get. So here I'm using the Sun-Kissed brush marker and Lava Rock together. I absolutely adore how this turned out. It's just, oh, I just love this color combination. Gray with bright pops of color is one of my favorite color combinations ever. So I'm just dabbing on the brush marker on the stamp and stamping it down. Here I've used the Trigonometry stamp set. Now, I absolutely love calligraphy, and again, I am no expert, but I love doing calligraphy and brush lettering with watercolor pens. And when I got the opportunity to use these brush markers, I knew that I had to try doing calligraphy with them. And the brush marker nibs are very, very pliable, and once you get the feel of how to move your brush pen and how much pressure to apply, they're an absolute dream to do lettering with. I'll probably be sharing more videos on how to do lettering. Here's a close-up of what the lettering is like. You can also do some really beautiful ombre effects. Now, after I did the lettering, I thought that I would try doing some watercolor style florals, some really abstract floral shapes, using these markers. So here I'm using turquoise, and I'm picking up just a little bit of purple wine, and I'm letting the rest of the ink flow through the brush tip, and I am just going to town with these brush markers. So the trick is just to start with a teeny tiny sort of C curve shapes and keep adding the curved shapes in a sort of staggered or concentric way, if that makes sense. And what you do is you start with very light pressure. You press it down to get that bigger swoosh, very technical term. And then when you get towards the end, you lift your brush tip to get that tapered edge. There's so many different ways that you can make watercolor flowers. These are like little rosette shapes that I turned into a complete background, because once you start making one, you just can't stop at one, and pretty much you'll have the whole page covered. I love how this turned out, and I hope that you'll give it a try and make your own sort of abstract watercolor shapes. Now, I turned this card background into an eclipse card, and I was really happy with how it turned out. If you'd like to see more close-up images of the finished cards, please visit my blog. I'll leave the link to all the supplies in the description box below. Now, one of my favorite ways to use watercolors and it is just trying to get visual texture into the background. So there's many different ways to do this. Here I have got a very wet watercolor panel, and I have added the I believe this is Sweet Leaf, and I'm using Lava Rock, and I'm adding lots of watercolor to it, and I've got a bit of bubble wrap here. I've added some water to it, and I am placing it on top of my wet cardstock panel, and I'm weighing it down with an acrylic block. And once it's completely dry, you'll be left with this beautiful textured piece. Here's another piece that I did earlier, and the next technique is using a spritzer. Now this is a spritzer by Ranger Tim Holtz. It's to use with the distress markers, and I really wanted to try doing like a spritzing spray kind of technique, and the brush markers are a bit too thick to go through the holder, but I just thought that this was another fun way to use these markers to get different effects. And here's a finished card. So another way to use these brush markers is by doing watercolor blocks. So here I've got my acrylic block, which I use for my stamps, but most of the time I end up using it for techniques like this. And I've put the ink on the acrylic block, and I've spritzed it with a little bit of ink, and I am pressing it down onto a piece of card. Just a very quick and simple effect that you can use to make card backgrounds. So this is my last technique. So this is splattering with the brush markers. So here I'm using a variety of the brush markers, and what I'm doing is I'm really loading them up on the side, making sure that the brush tip is really full of ink, and just flicking it onto my cardstock panel to get that splattered effect. I really love doing these splattered effects for when I feel like I need a really quick and easy background, and it's just beautiful to do. And here are some finished cards using that splatter background. Thank you so much for joining in today, and I hope you enjoyed the video and it gives you some ideas on how to use these brush markers. Please join me on the blog and take part in the blog hop, where the rest of the team shared tons of amazing ideas using these amazing markers. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.